Going to see a show on the West End is one of the most iconic London experiences and something that I recommend to everyone visiting London. But there are so many things that can go wrong, from overpaying for your ticket to going to a show that you don't particularly enjoy, or mistake number 4 that even experienced theater goers like myself fall for. I'm going to tell you all about these and share my best tips and tricks so you can make sure that your London theater experience is as smooth sailing as possible. So let's start with a common mistake or fear when it comes to the West End, and that is choosing a show that you are not going to like. You can't know everything about every single show that is on the West End and make the most informed decision. Especially if you're coming to London for the first time, you might be less familiar with what's good and what's less good. Ultimately, London is a pretty good place to go to the theater, and I would argue that most shows that you can see in London on the West End are pretty acclaimed or decent shows. But even with that, there are some shows that you personally might enjoy less. My first tip to avoid this mistake is to firstly understand if you prefer plays or musicals, because this will help you really narrow down your choice, because a lot of the shows on the West End are actually musicals, and if you focus just on the plays, then you might need to look into some other theaters across London as well. My second tip would be to go for the classics. There are so many acclaimed shows that have been on the West End for ages. The Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables, Hamilton, Wicked, which are a bit newer shows, but there are definitely acclaimed ones that have been around for a long time and have received prestigious awards. Once you know if you like a play or a musical, then you can narrow it down by just looking for these long-standing classics. When you've narrowed your choice down to maybe top 5 that you are considering, then it's a good time to check out reviews. There are plenty of publications that will pop up if you simply Google the name of the show plus review, or there are plenty of YouTube channels like my own. Now is the time to subscribe. You can check out a few opinions and then make your choice what you think is the best show to see. My bonus tip here is to check out the shows that are only available in London, such as Stranger Things, The First Shadow, or Operation Mincemeat, and plenty of other ones that do not get to be transferred to Broadway or get their video production of the show. So pay attention to those. Let's talk money. Overspending on tickets is one of the biggest concerns and also a challenge when it comes to going to theater, because theater is expensive, and if you're going for the best seats in the house, you can easily spend upwards of £200. But to make sure that you're not overpaying for your tickets, there are a few ways to consider when you're buying. Firstly, if you know that you're coming to London, try and book tickets as far in advance as possible, because if you're booking 2 or 3 months ahead, you will be able to have broader choice of seats, and it is more likely that you will get some cheaper seats in the house left also to buy, because these are the first to go. On the flip side, if you're very flexible and you're just coming to London and you want to see a show if there is something available on the day, this is a great way to secure last minute tickets. And the way to do this is to go to the official London Theatre TKTS website, and if you go there on the day, as soon as you wake up, you will be able to see some leftover seats for that day of the performance at a lower price, and this is probably the best value for money that you can get. Similarly, you can also go to the box office directly on the day of the performance, because a lot of people return their tickets, and this is another way to secure those last minute tickets for a cheaper price, because no theater wants to have the best seats in the house not being sold out. Todaytix app is also an amazing way to secure rush tickets. These are also unlocked on the day of the performance, and you can get tickets for £25–30 for the desired show. For rush tickets, there is normally a limit of 2 tickets, and you can't really select where you're gonna sit, so you just have to keep your fingers crossed that you're gonna get good seats. Bonus tip to make sure that you're not overpaying for your tickets is to actually go to the official production website and check out how much you would need to pay if you were buying the ticket through the official channel, because this is the most secure way to buy a ticket. There are a lot of resellers, third-party providers, and a lot of deals that are going around, so for you to get a good understanding of how much the tickets cost for different tiers of tickets, then the official production website is probably the best place to look at. Mistake number 3 is to go for the wrong seats. This is very common because tickets are expensive and you're trying to save, and then you pick those cheaper tickets, but then those cheaper tickets are actually restricted view and you can't actually see the whole stage, and then it turns out to be 3 hours of just being a little bit annoyed that you didn't check the view. So some ground rules for picking the best seats in the house is to get as closer to the middle section as possible. The middle section of stalls is probably where the tickets are the priciest and the view is the best. But my tip would be to actually try and find the seats that are bordering with the section that is a bit more expensive. expensive. Obviously, the prices are reflective of how good the seat is, but sometimes you can find seats that are a little bit on the side, but they're literally just bordering the more expensive bracket of seats, and these are really nice spots where you can kind of still get a really good view, but at a cheaper price. It doesn't help that most theaters in London have 3 or 4 levels that you can buy the seats from. It is important to know that if you go all the way up to the balcony, which is kind of the highest seat in the house, these are really steep. And my biggest tip here for picking the right seats would be to check out the seat view on Seat Plan. This is a website where theater goers upload the seat view for various theaters, and you can just type the name of the theater where you need to go, and then before you buy the ticket, go and see if someone uploaded a photo or left a comment about that seat, and then you can know the leg room, you can know the view, you can sometimes even see the view for the show and get the idea of how good that seat is. I think that this is probably the best way to secure good seats in the house, and I personally use it quite a lot. The fourth mistake that can happen to you is to be late for the show. Most shows start at 7:30, but some start at 7. So it's really important that you check the ticket and make sure that you know what time your show starts. And I'm saying this because I made this mistake quite recently. I just assumed that the show starts at 7:30, like majority in the West End, but it started at 7. And unlike some other events where you can rock up a little bit later, like a gig or something that doesn't have a strict start, theater is completely different. And if you are late for the show, you won't be admitted straight away, and in some cases you won't be admitted until the first act is done, which is what happened to me. And for an hour I was watching the play on this like really small TV, and I don't think it's worth it. So make sure to know what time your show starts, and my recommendation would be to be there for at least half an hour earlier. So if it starts at 7:30, be there for 7, because there's plenty of things to do. You need to find your seat, you might want to get a drink or a snack, you might want to get program. There are queues for some of the big shows as well. So half an hour is a good amount of time to make sure that you are not late for the beginning of the show. And also if there are some delays in transport, it accounts for that. If you're in London for the first time, then definitely stretch that to 45 minutes to an hour, because you never know how long it's going to take you to find the theater. You might get lost, you might go to the wrong theater. There's so many things that can happen, and definitely you don't want to miss the beginning of the show. So be there on time. This brings me to mistake number 5, and it is to do with theater etiquette. Mobile phones are not allowed to be in use during the performance, and this means no messaging, no phone calls, and of course no filming. One thing that is really particular to theater is that this is one of the few places that really allows you to fully switch off, and a lot of people come to theater because they really enjoy being completely disconnected from their reality, to enjoy a show, to enjoy a story. And if you're next to them with your phone on messaging, it just distracts them and it ruins their experience. And I think it's more fair to then leave if you don't like the show than stay and not engage with it. Also, when it comes to theater etiquette, I would say that singing or talking or spoiling the plot of the show, if you know it, isn't a good way to go. Theater is in most cases pretty quiet, and every movement, every little whisper, other people can hear and notice. And also if you have some snacks that are a little bit loud or something like that, everyone, including the actors on stage, can hear this. So I would kind of discourage everyone to bring snacks into the theater or to go to the theater thinking that this is a chatty environment, because it's definitely not. It's a place for everyone to enjoy the show, and the best way to enjoy it is to focus on the actors and what's in front of you. The mistake number 6 is around food and drinks. Theater is not a place where food is necessarily allowed, so I would never recommend you to bring your food, sandwiches or something like that to eat throughout the show. So I would highly recommend that you either go for a meal before the show. There are plenty of amazing restaurants around West End, but also if you need to have a quick snack or something like that, do that before the show starts, because once the show starts, everything gets dark and you can't find what you're looking for, and you will cause some commotion, and it just gets like a bit messy. And this also goes for like snacks that you can buy at the theater. Basically, in most theaters, you can't really buy proper food unless you're buying like a package where this is included. Most of the shows allow you to buy crisps or some candies or some chocolates and things like that. The best practice is to actually have this before the show starts, and then during the interval, in most cases, you have an ice cream that you can buy or get additional drinks. Obviously with drinks is a little bit easier because you can just like put them down and drink them as you go. It doesn't cause a lot of commotion. But when it comes to food, be mindful not to break the theater etiquette. Going to the theater used to be considered very posh, and people would dress up for the occasion. I think in majority of the cases for the West End, people are not necessarily dressing up. If you like that and if you'd like to. No one's gonna say that you shouldn't, but it's a very relaxed atmosphere. Majority of the people are dressed in smart casual attire, just kind of coming back from work, or maybe something like going out for a meal or a drink style. There are some venues that are a little bit more glamorous, such as Royal Opera House, where you're going to see opera or ballet, and this is where people are more likely to dress up. And also I've noticed this for classical music if you go to see something at Royal Albert Hall, but I don't think that any of the venues would necessarily turn you down if you just show up in smart casual. So don't worry too much about it and wear what's comfortable for you. We've got to the mistake number 8, and that is to assume that all of the shows are on the West End. There are some shows such as Wicked and Hamilton that are actually not really in that area, whereas Shaftesbury Avenue and like around Soho, it is actually in Victoria, and this is something that you should check, especially if you're going to see these two shows. There are also plenty of other theaters around London. This will all be on your ticket, so you'll know where to go, but if you are going to see shows on the West End, then you're most likely to be somewhere in the area between Piccadilly Circus, Leicester Square, Charing Cross, and Covent Garden. If you like to greet actors after the show, then you must pay attention not to do the mistake number 9, and that is to actually miss where the stage door is. I know that in a lot of American theaters, the stage door is very close to the actual entrance to the theater, so the actors come out that way after the show, which is the same way that the audience is exiting. But in London, a lot of the time, stage door is somewhere around the corner in a different street, kind of like behind the theater. And if you want to get autograph or say hello to actors or take a picture with them, then you need to find where this is. And for some theaters, this is going to be really easy to spot. For the others, definitely make sure to ask ushers or staff at the theater to point you in the right direction and ask them if the actors actually come outside and say hello to the audiences in case you aren't sure. And the 10th mistake is not to have plans to go somewhere afterwards. Most of the shows finish around 10:30, and if you are going to see a show on the weekend, then probably it's a good idea to have a bar or somewhere where you want to go afterwards. And the good news is that you're in central London. There are plenty of amazing spots around Soho, Chinatown, and just generally in that area there are a lot of cocktail bars and pubs and restaurants, so you are spoiled for choice. But the tip here is to definitely book something, because a lot of times, especially if you're going to see a show on the weekend, it gets booked up and you might not be able to get in. So make sure to know where you're going after the show. If you're unsure where to start when it comes to choosing your show, then I would recommend you go and see this video where I'm talking about my favorite shows that you can still see in 2024.